It's time for the Rams to start talking about the future, and we're going to start that conversation today as we have a couple of big-time players talking about their own iffy, maybe a possibility of not coming back to the Rams next season. We're also going to talk about the upcoming free agents this year and some possible cap casualties, some cut candidates for the Rams this offseason, all on today's episode of the Rams Digest. Before we move on, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. If you haven't subscribed already, 82.6% of you guys are watching the videos, but still not subscribed to the channel. So do me a favor, press that subscribe button now so you don't miss any daily Rams content here at the Rams Digest. Before we get into the future of the Rams, I have a little bit of a conversation to talk about here. QB wins, right? Who gets credit for the losses? Who gets credit for the wins? Usually the quarterback, right? That's why they get paid for. Why they get paid the big bucks, of course, right? Some people want to say why you pay quarterbacks $40, $50 million per year. They have to weigh all the pressure of winning games and losing games, right? And that's kind of why quarterbacks get paid what they get paid. But I just kind of want to start the conversation about, hey, let's not really give quarterbacks too much credit for winning games. Now, luckily, Matthew Stafford, he's got a ring, so not too many people hate on him too much. But when we have conversations about quarterbacks, it's tough, right? Look at Jalen Hurts, for example. Jalen Hurts beats the Rams, right? Oh my gosh, he's a beast, top 5 quarterback. He's got another playoff win. He's such a young quarterback with so many playoff wins. He's impressive. And I will say, Jalen Hurts has had an impressive resume so far in his career. But Jalen Hurts' EPA, expected points added per dropback in the divisional round, was negative 0.26, 169th. Nice. Among 171 quarterback games in a playoff win since 2010. The only worst performances in a playoff win by EPA in the last 15 years, Jimmy Garoppolo, 2021, divisional round, negative 0.39, and Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl 50, negative 0.58. Now, it's actually perfect. It's perfect that it's Peyton Manning and Jimmy Garoppolo, because that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Both those quarterbacks won that game where they had negative EPA, negative expected points added per attempt, right, per drop back. And so basically they're playing bad. That's really what we have to kind of acknowledge, right? They're not having the best of games in those games. And all 3 quarterbacks won those games. Now look at Peyton Manning. That added a lot to his legacy. He won a Super Bowl in Super Bowl 50. It was a very defensive game, I think, versus Carolina Panthers, if I'm not mistaken. He had a great season, but ultimately that Super Bowl performance wasn't the best. Peyton Manning's one of the best quarterbacks ever. Great for him. Who cares? Bad performance. Still won the Super Bowl. Good for him. Look at Jimmy Garoppolo, right? He gets credit for that playoff win in 2021, but he had a bad game. He had a poor performance, right? Are people calling him a top 5 quarterback? Not really, right? So when we talk about Jalen Hurts, right? He went to the Super Bowl a couple years ago, and everyone kind of said, right? Oh, Jalen Hurts, he's a top 3, top 2 quarterback. That was kind of the topic of conversation at the time, and I just kind of want to emphasize, it's not about Jalen Hurts, it's not about Matthew Stafford. It's just generally speaking, when we have these conversations about quarterbacks, we need to relax, right? Look at Lamar Jackson. I love Lamar Jackson. I don't want, Lamar Jackson to get all the hate that he's been getting, because it's a little frustrating. He's a great quarterback, and yes, he's had poor performances in the playoffs and maybe fumbled the football in this playoff game, but he was there. He put his team in a position with an incredible touchdown throw, might I add, versus the Buffalo Bills. Yet he throws it to Mark Andrews for that last second catch to go for 2 to tie the game. Are we really blaming Lamar Jackson? Or are we really saying Lamar Jackson is not a good quarterback because he can't win in the playoffs when that happens to him, right? Football is just such a team sport. That's kind of all I'm saying. I've been seeing a lot of people talk on social media about quarterbacks and their success and their playoff wins and all that good stuff. And I just want to emphasize, let's relax. Let's just give quarterbacks a little bit of credit for wins, a little bit of blame for losses, but let's understand that a lot more goes on in football than just wins and losses. That's all I'm gonna say there. But speaking about the Rams specifically, right? That kind of was a conversation I just wanted to have, but a little rant I wanted to go on, if you will. But rebuild. Is it time to rebuild for the Rams? Now, I do want to kind of maybe change that word here, because I don't want people to be turned off by the idea, but I talked about this when the Rams were 1-4, right? When we were making videos on this channel, I was a little bit, the Rams were in a situation where it was time to maybe start looking toward the future, right? Start winning some football games. Matthew Stafford's playing well. The defense is playing a lot better than expected. And, Cooper Kupp comes back and Puka Nacua comes back. And all of a sudden this team looked like they were going to go on a Super Bowl run, or at least were, a potential, right? A potential team that could go on a Super Bowl run. Now let's get back to reality, right? Matthew Stafford, older quarterback, he's getting to the end of his career. Do you want him to be your quarterback for the next year? I mean, that's kind of really what it is. And if you do, and I think Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp and guys like that, they have the respect of the organization as they are Rams legends, right? And they're always going to be Rams legends. They have the respect of the organization to be able to say, you do what you want to do. If you want to play, then you'll be on the Rams. If you don't want to play football anymore, let us know so we can kind of move forward. But the Rams have to decide at least who their future quarterback is going to be, at least who their future secondary receiver is going to be next to Puka Nacua. And that's kind of all that I'm saying here. But let's hear from the quarterback and the receiver here. First, I apparently want to pull up some Rams free agents. Rams free agents in general, right? We're talking about rebuild. We'll talk about Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp in a second, but in general, this is why we're talking about starting to retool this lineup, retool what you have right now in terms of your players on the roster. Right, we're talking about Alaric Jackson, a free agent, Kilo Witherspoon, Demarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell, Joseph Noteboom or Joe Noteboom, Christian Roseboom, Michael Hoyt, Bobby Brown III, Troy Reeder, Tyler Johnson, Hunter Long, Neville Gallimore, Jimmy Garoppolo, and John Johnson. It's a lot of players that are on their way out for the Rams, right? And that's why we're talking about a guy like Matthew Stafford, why we're talking about a guy like Cooper Kupp as well. You have to make decisions on those guys, right? And if those guys want to play football, I think I would excuse the Rams or be okay with the Rams saying, you let me know, Matthew Stafford. You let me know, Cooper Kupp. And we'll talk about those two in a second. But the rest of these guys, right, it's a big-time decision. Do you want to just move on from all of these guys? I think that may be a real possibility. Or do you want to pay, Alaric Jackson to be your starting left tackle moving forward? Do you want to pay Akila Witherspoon a couple more seasons to be a veteran cornerback in that DB room? These are questions the Rams are going to have to ask themselves. Is that what they really want? Do you really want Demarcus Robinson to be your receiver 2 to receiver 3 over the next couple of years? He had a couple great plays, don't get me wrong, but you're looking at Jordan Whittington's on the roster already, right? This is just the reality of building a football team. You can't just like these guys and bring them all back and sign them for however much money. You have to start thinking about the reality of the situation. Where can you save money? Where can you save cap space? And moving forward, start building on, signing a big-time quarterback if there's a free agent out there, or a big-time receiver, or just in general moving on and having that cap space ready to pay the guys who are on the roster right now. Puka Nacua, Jared Verse in a few years, right? That's kind of the conversation you're kind of looking at. And so that's why we're talking about Stafford. That's why we're talking about Cooper Kupp as well. What do the Rams want to do? Do you want to bring those two guys back? If you do bring those two guys back, are you going to sign all those free agents right now to 1-year, 2-year deals so that way we can kind of keep this same roster together? Or are we ready to move on? And that's kind of where I'm at. And I want you Rams fans, let me know right now. If you're watching this video right now still here in the comments, let me know. What do you want the Rams to do? Do you want them to continue to just build on what this team is still? Or are you ready for the next step in the Rams' future? That's kind of the question that we have to ask. Because there's also a reality of coaching, right? Coaching, we could lose coaches, we could lose Stafford, Kupp, all that good stuff. So let's pull up this next story here as we have Matthew Stafford first. We'll talk about the quarterback first, right? The most important position on the field. Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford says it sure feels like it when he was asked if he has more football in him. After the playoff loss versus the Eagles. So that was Matthew Stafford's kind of initial reaction. Yep, it sure feels like I can play football still. You guys saw that 2-minute drive, right, where I was in a playoff game in the snow and I was, marching us down the field until, I got sacked, of course, and, whatever. That's Matthew Stafford's perspective, right? 2 minutes left, 51-plus game-winning drives in his career. Matthew Stafford was ready to go on another one, and he almost did put the Rams down another one until he got sacked, and then there was forced to be in a bad situation from there, right? So that's kind of where Stafford's perspective is. He does have a little bit of football left in him, right? He could probably sign somewhere else for $30, $40, $50 million for at least a couple more years because he does still have some football left in the tank. But here's what Matthew Stafford had to say officially about that. He says here, as I'm pulling up the wrong screenshot, Matthew Stafford says, as far as my future goes, it's 30 minutes after our last game. This was him talking post-game. So I'll take some time to think about it. I feel like I was playing some really good ball. And I think many Rams fans will kind of agree with him, right? I think Matthew Stafford was playing some really good football. But again, I think the Rams have to look at their future right now, right? And I think you got to respect Stafford and Kupp enough to really let them both decide when they want to move on. If both these guys want to play football, if I'm in the room with Les Snead, I'm saying, I get it. You want to win now. We want to look toward the future. You got to respect Stafford, our legendary quarterback who brought a Super Bowl, and Cooper Kupp, our legendary receiver who got a Super Bowl. You got to respect both the guys enough to say, you let me know. I'm going to sign you guys for whatever, more or less, whatever money you want. We're going to keep you guys here if you still want to play football. I think that's kind of the respect you should give these players, or let them know, hey, you decide. Do you want to play somewhere else? Do you want to go play for the Kansas City Chiefs, Cooper Kupp? Do you want to, Matthew Stafford, go try to be the quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders and try to, bring that franchise some success? What do you want to do? And you guys decide. And that's why I think Les Snead and the organization should probably lean towards, because these guys are legends. You want to respect them in that way. But for the Rams' success on the field, I think maybe it is time to move on. I think this was a great season. I think it was just something to be proud of for sure from Sean McVay and the coaching staff, but it's time to move on. You have some talent on defense, right? Clearly they showed that, yes, they didn't have the best numbers all year long, but if you add a couple pieces here and there, that defense is pretty good, right? And then we're looking at the offense. They're a little bit older, right? So if Stafford and Kupp are moving on, then you replace them with your future quarterback, hopefully your future franchise guy, hopefully a future receiver 2 next to Puka Nacua, and all of a sudden we're in business, right, moving forward. And so that's kind of the thoughts that I'm having right now as we're talking about all these guys maybe moving on from the Rams, talking about Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp says, I will be playing football next year. That much I know. So, we've heard a couple of stories on the channel and just in general on social media of Cooper Kupp, and it was really hard for him to kind of take a step back, as possibly you can look at him now the last couple of years as receiver 2 to Puka Nacua. It was kind of hard for Cooper Kupp to take a step back in the offense, not really be the face of the franchise or the receiver. And so he's acknowledged that it's been a battle for him internally, and it's a tough pill to swallow, I guess, for Cooper Kupp in his career. So does he want to play somewhere else? Like I said, if Cooper Kupp says, I want to go sign with the Chiefs, or I want to go sign with the Bills, or I want to go sign with whatever team you think is competitive enough and it has enough money to afford Cooper Kupp, then why not let him go do what he kind of wants to do? Unless he wants to play for the Rams. And that's kind of where it's at. I'm not really getting that vibe from Cooper Kupp. If you pull this story up here, his quote here, he says, I don't have any clarity on what that's going to look like. Obviously, I would love to be in LA, but I don't know what that is going to look like. Do I want to play next year? Oh, yeah. And he laughed a little bit when he said that. He said, there's no doubt in my mind I want to play football. I feel like I've got a lot of football left in me. I definitely will be playing. I will be playing football next year. That much I know. And so, he says he wants to be in LA. I keep messing up these screenshots. He says he wants to be in LA. He says he wants to play football next year. Not that he wants to play football next year. Cooper Kupp is saying he's going to play football next year. And I saw someone in the comments on the Rams Digest channel saying, bring him back. We want Cooper Kupp. But you also have to kind of pause for a second and just realize the reality of cap space, money, and things like that. I'm leaning more towards, I don't really care about that again when it's Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford, because they're legends. But at the same time, you do got to kind of acknowledge that, right? I think that's something that the Rams do have to look at. And I don't want to pull that up. I want to pull this up, right? When we're talking about cap casualties, some candidates for the Rams, right? You got to kind of look at it this way. Cooper Kupp, specifically, $29.8 million would be his cap hit. And this is making me mad that I keep messing up the screenshots. Cooper Kupp, $29.8 million. I mean, that's a lot of money for a starting receiver who is about to hit 32 years old next year. So that is kind of why you kind of look at a guy like Cooper Kupp and you start thinking about the future and moving on from someone like him, just because that cap hit is so large. But at the end of the day, I think the Rams are in a very sensitive situation. I think Rams fans can agree. They wouldn't want to just see a Cooper Kupp wave and see him go sign with Buffalo, or see him go sign with whatever team you think would use his services. It'd be tough. It'd be tough to see a legendary Rams player move on in that fashion. You kind of want him to, if he was a free agent, he wanted to sign elsewhere, then that's cool. It's up to him. But for the Rams to have to make that decision to cut him, it's a little bit tough, right? And that's kind of where the conversation is going. What do the Rams do? What should the Rams do? You guys let me know what you would think. I'm leaning towards talking with Cooper Kupp and letting him seeing what he wants to do. If he wants to play for the Rams, let him play for the Rams. If he wants to go somewhere else, let him go somewhere else. And that's kind of where I think the Rams should probably look towards. And we can pull back this screenshot up here. As I was talking about, not just the players, right? Now we're not talking about just players. We're talking about other people in the organization. Ben Johnson, he goes to Chicago. What about, Chris Shula, our defensive coordinator? Is he going to be here for the Rams next year? And maybe some people don't want him here. I don't know how you guys feel about him, but ultimately that's the reality, right? The Rams could lose Chris Shula, a legendary, or at least a legendary heritage, legendary family tree there with his dad and his grandfather, what they did for the NFL in their time as coaches. And I think it's a reality, right? It's not every day that a head coaching position opens up for a franchise where they allow you to do a lot of things. And if Chris Shula gets an opportunity to go to the Raiders, for example, I'm not saying he's guaranteed to go there, but if that was to happen, what are the Rams looking at, right? That's rebuilding your coaching staff. Do you want to bring back the same team with the rebuilt coaching staff, or would you rather rebuild the coaching staff and rebuild the team at the same time? It's just a lot to think about for the Rams, and I think it's something they have to look into this offseason. Maybe you let Chris Shula move on to be a head coach if that's what he wants to do. Maybe you let Matthew Stafford decide whether or not he wants to play football next year. And if he does, if he wants to play for the Rams, cool. If he doesn't, he wants to go join Chris Shula with the Raiders. Again, a very, very, very hypothetical. That's not rumored to happen. It's just an idea out there, right? Let him go do that, right? Let Cooper Kupp decide. Does he want to play for the Rams? Does he want to play elsewhere? He clearly wants to play football, but where does he want to? What does he want to do? Where does he want to go? And let that make your decision for you. And the reason why is because the Rams, again, are in a specific scenario where they have Rams legends on the roster that you have to kind of respect their wishes, because they've done so much for you and your franchise. Respect them enough to give them that courtesy to make their own decision. And then based off of that, you move on, you rebuild a team. Because even if Matthew Stafford's back with the squad, even if Cooper Kupp is back with the squad, you can still draft another receiver. You can still draft a quarterback. You can still trade, sign, whatever you want to do, quarterback, receiver, position, offensive line, rebuilding. You can do all of that expecting those guys to be done sooner rather than later, and then build your team to still succeed next year with those guys and help those guys compete as much as possible. We're a few years removed from that huge, big time, right, couple years where the Rams were in such, a bad cap situation that it was hard to rebuild the team. Now that you have a bunch of young players on defense, a few young players on offense, let's take advantage of that. Hopefully get some of that cap space going and, spend money here and there to retool this team to be ready. If it's Stafford and Kupp, cool. If it's not, let's get ready for that as well. That's how I feel. You guys let me know what you feel in the comments below. Don't forget, if you're not subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any daily Rams content. That's going to do it for me on today's episode of the Rams Digest. I'm your host, Joshua Giron, and I'm out.